In this video I only show you my personal opinion. There are other drummers with other opinions. Those drummers may be the better choice for certain bands than me. Hi, this is my 5th drum video and it's about my practice kit. I use a very special practice kit, not an electronic kit nor a ready-to-buy kit. I'm a professional drummer for many years now, so I have some expectations concerning the flexibility and the sound of my practice kit. I don't need to hear any drum sound while I'm practicing, and that is why I don't use an electronic drum kit. Instead, like most professionals, I prefer a practice sound as soft as possible. First I show you 3 practice pads. The one I started drumming with back in 1977, a pad made by Remo, developed in the 1960s. Then the famous Billy Hyde pad, also developed in the 60s. Then a modern pad made by Stack. Obviously, the modern pad has a softer sound. Nowadays, most drummers prefer modern, softer pads. Only beginner, especially if they are children, should have louder pads. The same applies to bass drum pads. Here you see my bass drum pad. It is made by Meinl. It is my 3rd bass drum pad. I bought the 2nd one because I didn't like the loud sound of my 1st one. Then I bought this one because it sounds even significantly softer than the 2nd one. But it is still so loud that I have to put a double soundproofing mat underneath it in order to minimize the disturbance of the people living 1 floor lower. This is my double bass pedal. It is made by ACD from Austria. It is my 6th double bass pedal. It is expensive, but I wanted to have a real high quality pedal which allows me to adjust almost every detail stepless. I mention only a few other features. The very lightweight beater, the possibility to adjust the pedal board to a very low angle, and a good spring geometry. I recommend buying a high quality drum pedal from a small company because big companies tend to face a lot of pressure to cut production costs. This often leads to single cheap parts even in high-priced products. I also bought an expensive snare stand because I wanted one with long legs and many options for different adjustments. This one is from DW. My snare pad is a 14-inch pad from Debian with a normal coated drum head because I also use it for brush exercises. I use a hired machine from the 70s. It was almost my first one and it underwent several repairs, but it is still good enough for my practice kit. Although I use a modern hi-hat machine with 2 legs on stage. Don't spend much money on a hi-hat machine for your practice kit. A cheap one will do the job as long as the spring is loose enough. I use 10-inch hi-hat cymbals dampened with fabric. Otherwise, the cymbals would be too loud compared to the other elements of the practice kit. I use 4 pads from Stack as toms, are mounted on a cymbal boom stand. The leftmost pad is screwed to the upper part of a cheap pad stand. I cut the pipe with a pipe cutter. Then I fasten it with a multi-clamp to the boom stand. The other 3 pads have to be secured by a lock nut. The next pad is screwed to the top of the cymbal stand. The other 2 pads are screwed to several clamps made by PDP. I use several different setups. First, one without snare and hi-hat. With this setup I practice both hands simultaneously while working on several foot combinations such as paradiddles, flam rudiments and others. Second, normal setup with snare for traditional grip. I use it only for traditional up-tempo swing independent studies. Third, this one is without snare. I use it only for inverse traditional up-tempo swing independent studies. That means that my left hand plays the swing pattern on the 3rd pad as cymbal substitute and the right hand on the 4th pad as snare substitute. Fourth, snare mounted for traditional grip, no hi-hat. This one I use for shuffle rhythm studies only. Left hand swivel technique plus right hand shuffled 8s plus some double foot combination. Fifth, this one is for learning songs, either my arrangements, my compositions or other songs. Surprisingly, this setup has no hi-hat. I use a pad instead. Notice that I speak the sound while I'm playing. After so many years of training, I don't need the foot control of the hi-hat anymore. I can imagine the sound the hi-hat should produce while I'm practicing songs. The same applies to the crash cymbals. I simply beat the air and speak the sound. Only for the right cymbal I use my old drum pad occasionally. Let me recommend a good drum seat with a spindle and the end. I use one with a saddle because I don't like sitting several hours on a round seat. However, if you never sit on your seat longer than 1 or 2 hours, a round seat will do it also. In my next video, I show you some more rudiments for hands and for feet practiced to a metronome beat or to songs of a certain tempo.